Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ignite 2020 Ask the Expert session. Today, we're going to be covering end-to-end machine learning for enterprise in a secure way. I'm Brenda Lee, and I'm a program manager on the Azure Machine Learning team. Welcome to our session. So before we get started, I wanted to cover some quick ground rules in terms of how to ask questions. It's pretty straightforward. There's a chat box on the side, so you'll use the chat to ask your questions. And when you see questions pop up, upvote your favorite questions using the thumbs up sign, and we'll use the number of votes to kind of prioritize how we want to go about answering the questions on this during this session. So just quick etiquette in terms of what's going to happen in this session. Please ask questions that are relevant to the topic. We're going through this session is going to be recorded, and please adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct, which is posted in the chat window as well as on the next slide if you want to skim through it quickly. Thanks so much, and I'll pass it to Junpei.
Okay, so hello everybody. So today we have 6 experts and 2 from Workspace team, Azure Machine Learning, and 3 from Compute Instance team, and 1 from Core Service Engineering Operations. So yeah, so this is Junpei Hirono, another program manager of Azure Machine Learning platform team, focusing on enterprise security such as VNET or private link or etc. Okay, how James?
Thanks, Junpei. I'm James Pfaff, a software engineer mainly focused on private link and of some pretty serious expertise in networking in Azure and also just regular vanilla networking. I'll pass it off to Vijeta.
Thanks, James. Hi, I'm Vijeta Jory. I am a program manager in Azure Machine Learning team, primarily focused on compute instance and broader compute. Thanks.
And I'm Isis McCafferty. I'm a software engineer on the compute instance team, primarily just focused on working on all aspects of the compute instance. Brenda?
No, Kamal. Yeah.
Hi, this is Kamal Agarwal. I work for Core Service Engineering and Operations team. I focus on building the machine learning, working on machine learning projects and building the platform for machine learning where multiple teams and projects can work more efficiently across Microsoft Enterprise.
So it looks like we need some more time to receive questions. So Brenda, how do we start?
Yeah, sounds good. So I think thanks everyone for joining so far. We're going to, I don't know if everyone was able to get a chance to attend Junpei and Vijeta's session earlier today on actual detailing out all the different enterprise options that we have and security options that we have available in Azure Machine Learning. So Junpei, did you want to give a quick summary or overview of what was covered in the session, maybe like a couple of minutes, so folks that might be joining for the first time might have a better idea of what was covered and more questions to ask?
Okay, yeah, so yeah, today we had a 30-minute session focusing on security and compliance of Azure Machine Learning platform. And yeah, I saw many enterprise customers started building machine learning platform, and security and compliance of machine learning platform is pretty challenging because you need to combine lots of open source technology and lots of computing environment. So having said that, we did a presentation for that to explain how to build a secure and compliant machine learning platform using Azure Cloud and Azure Machine Learning. So yeah, in that session, we explained key security features of Azure Machine Learning, such for identity and data and network. So identity is authentication and RBAC, and data is a data encryption, and network is the VNET and private link stuff. And after that, Vijeta explained the overview of compute instance, and we also do the end-to-end enterprise security demo. From training to from workspace provisioning to training to model deployment. Yeah, so that's the overview of our session. And yeah, if you miss our session, yeah, please look at them. Please look at the session after that. Yeah. Vijay, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so just in the demo, I think we showed some capabilities like no public IP on compute clusters, which is a big enterprise ask, and we also showed like RBAC, VNET, private link, create on behalf of like enterprise readiness capabilities for compute instance. Thanks.
Great. So thanks for doing the quick overview, Junpei and Vijeta. There's a few questions that we wanted to cover for the session. So one of the questions is to kind of go into a little more detail about the specifics of the security features around AML. Junpei, are you able to touch a little bit on the VNET and private link options that are available?
Yeah, so thanks. So in Ignite, we basically announced the GA, the Workspace private link. So if you enable private link Workspace, you can access to the Workspace over private IP from your VNet. So that's the pretty fundamental requirement for most of enterprise customers. So we are pretty happy to announce GA of that. And as you may know, if you provision Azure Machine Learning Workspace, you will get associated resources such as storage or Azure Container Registry or Keyboard. So yeah, we also support service endpoint and we'll support private endpoint for them. And we also put compute resources such as compute cluster, compute instance, and AKS cluster behind VNet. And we also support private AKS cluster. So yeah, in terms of network security, the remaining portion still have public IP is compute cluster and compute instance. And I think, yeah, Vijeta is the SME of them. So Vijeta can share some insights on that. Vijeta.
Sure. Regarding security aspects related to compute, so we have no public IP on compute clusters currently in private preview. So which kind of removes all public endpoints for clusters, and private link technology is used all up for that. And in a compute instance, you can deploy it in virtual networks and in a private link workspace. And we are looking to extend the no public IP support to compute instance as well, so that only private link technology is used for all communication and traffic remains on Azure backbone network and the VNet. And other capabilities, enterprise capabilities which compute instance has is it adheres to RBAC. So a lot of different operations like control plane operations, management operations can be controlled by RBAC, and some data plane operations such as notebook access is also controlled through RBAC. And we are also looking into some other enterprise and admin capabilities such as setup scripts which run at creation time to help customize the compute instance as an admin needs, and coupled with the like create on behalf of capabilities where admin can create a compute instance on behalf of data scientists. They can customize it and assign. So that is something what we are looking at. And today we are create on behalf of in public preview. And we're looking at things like setup scripts and auto shutdown, like a lot of these asks we have heard from customers, and we're trying to enable it. We're looking into that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, so appreciate the overview and detailed insight, Junpei and Vijeta. One other question that I think would be really useful to cover is for Kamal. So I know that lots of customers are evaluating Azure ML or other ML options, but sometimes it's difficult to actually figure out, like, how do I build on actual end-to-end ML project or end-to-end ML solution that's appropriate for enterprise. So Kamal, do you mind giving either an overview or some tips and tricks that you have for how to actually implement ML projects in Microsoft that's enterprise grade?
Sure. Thanks, Brenda. So basically, as I mentioned, right, I work for core service engineering and operations team where we are basically, Microsoft is an enterprise organization for us, and we build tools and applications which is used across Microsoft. So I manage one of the environment where we have built a ML platform to use it across core service engineering team and even broader across Microsoft as well. So as part of this core platform, we primarily focus on quality and security, and third big component is productivity. We want to make sure our employees, our developers are more productive while working on the ML project. So to increase the productivity as part of this ML platform, we have built many different reusable components. So for an example, when you start a new project, ML project, we already have like all the logging components pre-built where you don't have to write any code. You just call those components and your logging is enabled. We support many different data sources. So all the connections are pre-built and all the code is already there. You just specify which is your data source where you want to pick up the data, and you have the access on the data. As we mentioned, security is another big piece. For security, we use Key Vault. So we make sure like all the connection string, app IDs, everything we store in the Key Vault. We have like two different environments. So at Microsoft, we normally use pre-production environment and production environment. Many different organizations, they have like three different environments where they have dev, test, and prod environment. So, and you might have different data sources for different environments. So all of those stuff we manage directly in the Key Vault and connecting it from there. Then from there we have set up the ML, the whole environment. So in the ML environment, we pre-canned all these different Azure components which are already configured and connected to each other. So when new team want to onboard an ML project, all we have to do is we need to know like what role they are going to play in this project and add them into that security group, and everything behind the scene gets configured, and they get permissions and access on all the components which they need to build. And same way, like once the model is ready and there are customers who need to use those models, we have processes where people can just join those processes. We can add those end users and they directly get access to the model, which they can use it in their processes. So that's like pretty much like end-to-end process which we have built. And we have noticed like when a new project started, like before we had this platform, it used to take about 3 to 4 weeks to set up a brand new ML environment to work on a project from end to end. Now that has reduced to like within 2 to 3 days, a like developer of 10 to 15 people team can onboard on the ML platform in 2 to 3 days. So it's very efficient.
Great, thank you so much, Kamal, for that great answer. Next question is for Vegeta, and the question is actually on compute instance. Are you able to give a quick overview of what is compute instance, why it's useful, why do people want to use it, etc.?
Sure, thanks, Brenda. Yeah, so we think of compute instance as a managed enterprise workstation for data scientists to make it easy to get started with machine learning development on Azure while providing the admin management capabilities and the enterprise instincts which every enterprise asks for. So we really think of it as an interactive dev test environment, and it's really a PaaS service with the hosted on behalf of model where all the resources are deployed in Microsoft subscription. So the customers don't have to manage the resources for underlying resources for compute instance in their subscription. And the data scientists find there that to run notebooks, all the popular tools which they love, such as Jupyter Lab, Jupyter, the Azure ML notebooks, which you see in the screenshot, also on the left pane, or run R scripts through the RStudio experience, which is there. So there's like a first-class web experience for each of these tools, and it can be accessed through the browser. Compute instance today is Ubuntu based. It's Ubuntu 16, and we are looking at to upgrade to latest Ubuntu versions. And the data scientists have root access there. That means they can fully customize it as they need. They can install pip packages, app packages, or any drivers they might need for GPU training, CUDA, CUDA, and like change the versions and so on. So they have the full flexibility to use it as their kind of dev test environment. It's very tightly integrated with the Azure Machine Learning Workspace. The compute instance is provisioned as a child resource of Workspace. and the notebooks are mounted on every compute instance. So notebooks are part of the workspace storage, and through that, different users in the same workspace can collaborate on notebooks while working on different compute instances. And it's a secure training compute target where users can submit local jobs, remote jobs, and even distributed training jobs. And in the demo, we showed GPU PyTorch distributed training run on MNIST dataset. Which kind of highlighted that you can use the compute instance as a single node multi-GPU box. And as a warm compute, the run starts kind of right away because you don't have to wait for the cluster to provision to scale up. So it takes advantage of the warm compute aspect of compute instance. I wanted to point out we went GA a couple of months ago in July, which means we have been investing heavily on things like reliability, availability, performance, and quickly iterating on feedback. And as we have mentioned before, it has a bunch of enterprise readiness capabilities like VNET, private link support, RBAC, create on behalf of, which we also demoed, and encryption in transit using TLS 1.2. And we're looking to extend the private IP support to compute instance as well. Also, I talked about the setup scripts. We are looking into that so that compute instance at the creation time can be customized. Yeah, that is it for now. Any more questions on that? Or
no, I think we're good. Next question. We'll move on to the next question, which is around private link. And so I think private link is a pretty popular term, but it'd be great if James, would you mind talking a little bit more about private link? What exactly is it? Why do people want to use it?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Brenda. So the main problem private link solves is like today, if you like create a service that's accessible via the internet, you expose yourself to a lot of risks where, say, some malicious actor can get an authorization token to that particular service. They can take it outside of your environment and use it to, say, exfiltrate data or use a resource in a way that you don't want that actor to. And so what private link solves is it basically allows you to have private connectivity to a resource such that anyone that doesn't have that private connectivity to that resource is not able to access it. So in the context of Azure Machine Learning, to access a given workspace, you must have that is behind private link. You must have a private link to it. So you control both the risk of data exfiltration and also just like malicious access to a service or like the workspace itself. And combined with private link access to storage, ACR, et cetera, you can really lock down the environment that is used as part of a workspace. So I hope that explains it.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks so much for for sharing that. Next question from the chat is around the actual ML workspace creation and lifecycle. So this is for Kamal, and the question is this ML workspace creation and lifecycle management framework used by core services publicly available for reuse? Or is there a reference on how to recreate, what are best practices, etc.?
Thanks, Brenda. So currently the workspace which we have built is not publicly available. This is mainly configured for our own environment within Microsoft. We do have a lot of guidance, which we are in the process of like releasing it as a white paper at some point of time, but it's not available yet. We will make sure that probably some point of time we will release it as a white paper. This is a good idea or suggestion like that, which you just brought up, that maybe we can create it as a service and make it as release it as a service to external customers as well. So we can start thinking about that as well.
Thanks, Kamal. And actually, another question for you asked by one of our MVPs is actually around the time for setup. So earlier you had mentioned that the time that it takes for setup is around 4 weeks. That seems pretty long. Are there actually specific things that still remain a bottleneck?
So initially, when I said 4 weeks, so 4 weeks was like, let's say you are starting a new ML project, right? So you need to have mostly you already have the Azure subscription, but then you need to create your resource group. You need to acquire all your artifacts, like set up the key vault, your app insights, AML. If you have different data sources, maybe ATLS. So you need to set up all of those things, and then connectivity between them, and then implementing all the ML related application and processes. So all that take pretty long time. So pretty much most of them are already automated now as part of our process. The next thing what we are looking for is, like, if you are working on a particular ML project, let's say you are working on NLM project. So there's a lot of text processing which you have to do, and there are like cane steps, like first 5 or 6 steps are pretty much same, which you do in every project. So what we are planning to do next is maybe create the reusable components for those steps, where we can just parameterize it. Any project you start, you just pass those values, and all of those first step are automatically done, and you just get the results. So there are multiple opportunities in those areas where we can automate and improve the efficiencies of different ML projects. So that's something which we can take it further and improve.
Thanks, Kamal. Great. Next question is around integration. So for James, do you mind sharing about how would the integration with the existing customer network work?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brenda. So I've worked with quite a few customers across a few different enterprises, and there are a couple of common threads with difficulties with integration. And so a lot of these customers will use the kind of like standard practice of a hub and spoke model for their Azure network, and then peer the hub with using ExpressRoute with their on-premises network. And that does introduce a bit of difficulty with how we set up seamless access to private link, because we make heavy use of what's called a private DNS zone, which expects that the access to the workspace you're trying to access is done via a VNet that is in the Azure cloud. And so the main way that we've worked with customers to solve these integration issues is ensuring that these kind of DNS entries that we expect to be in the private DNS zone that's attached to the VNet, we have those customers create those same DNS entries in their on-premises DNS. And then when they try to access that workspace that's connected to via private link, the client resolves the correct IP address that's in a VNet somewhere in their hub and spoke model, and then that's appropriately routed through the private endpoint to the workspace. And then one other issue that we have seen is kind of like proxy access to specific workspaces, because we actually change the host name that you use to access a workspace when it's being accessed via private link. And then that has the benefit of you can basically set rules in your enterprise proxy that if the service is being accessed using a specific suffix that is shown on the private endpoint in the Azure portal, then you can make sure that that request traverses your private network rather than going to the public internet. So I hope that explains it for you.
Great, thanks, James. So another question from the chat around private link as well. The question is, when will AML private link be available in Australia East? The docs only mention 3 regions at the moment. Also, will tools like the UX Designer, AutoML be fully functional with private link enabled? Junpei, do you mind answering this question?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for your question. So as of now, private link workspace is available in 3 regions, East US, West US 2, and South Central US. And as a public preview in Australia East region will be available by the end of this week. And after that, by the end of this week. And in the next week, we will do GA So at that timing, every Azure Machine Learning regions, excluding China and Azure government, will be available. Okay. And for the UI question, so let me share some insights on background information. So in the past few months, UI services such as Designer or AutoML do not work with private link workspace. And actually, the blocker was storage behind the service endpoint. And now service endpoint is enabled. So you can use UI services with the combination of private link and service endpoint storage. And I assume you want to use private endpoint storage as well. And now we are validating it. We are validating it by component services by AutoML or Designer. So the combination of private link workspace and private endpoint storage will be available soon. Yep. So yeah, that's the question. Yep. That's the answer. I'm sorry. I'm retired.
Thanks, Junpei. All right, so we have around 5 minutes left. If you have a question, pop it in the chat. One question that we're going to ask here is around compute instance, and this is going to be for ISIS. Do you mind sharing about the single sign-on functionality for a compute instance?
Sure, thanks. So for compute instance, for a long time, there's been this kind of thorn in people's sides where they'll sign into their compute instance and they'll go through an authentication process, and then as soon as they're done, they get into Jupyter and they have a notebook and they start working on the notebook. And the first thing our notebook asks them to do is access their workspace. And then it asks them to sign in again, which is obviously pretty annoying. This sign in actually requires you to copy and paste the code, so it's like extra difficult. So instead, now we can store your login information from the first sign in, and we can just use that again as many times as we want while you're using the compute instance. And even if you leave the compute instance and go somewhere else, let's say you have an automated job submission process, you can still be authenticated when that job process continues submitting jobs, so you never get signed out. And this is available in West Central US region today, and we'll be rolling out to other regions as we test it there.
Great, thank you for that. There's one more question that came up in the chat around compute instance. So either Vegeta or Isis can please answer this question. The question is, can we use compute instance in a data factory pipeline?
We have the pipeline capability today, like in Azure Machine Learning, and so we can, as a compute target, use compute instance in any of the pipeline steps, and through that should be possible to automate various processes. And we're also looking at ways to integrate better with data on compute instance, user can just specify the blob URI, and it can be mounted through blob views on compute instance to better integrate with data. So those are the kind of things we're looking for, like better data integration with the compute instance, and similarly auto mounting of like data stores and data sets, which AML has. So I think those capabilities will help there. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Vegeta. And thanks to all the experts on this call and the MVPs and everyone who joined in online for attending our Ask the Experts session. We're coming up at 30 minutes, so just want to say thanks, everyone. And we'll keep the slide up with some resource links at the end. Appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day.